Thank you. Thank you. Ena iwi, ena mana, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome and thank you. My name is Paul Muckleston. I'm a Kiwi. I'm the local Managing Director for Microsoft. Been back in New Zealand for 2 years, having spent a number of years working with Microsoft across Central and Eastern Europe and Western Europe. A lot of that time often working with governments in different countries. So it's quite interesting looking at how things work here versus how they've been working elsewhere. I guess for Microsoft, the relationships that we have, with governments are often complex and are often sort of multi-dimensional. There are a range of different stakeholders with us, from customer to regulator to sort of key stakeholder, sometimes partner in private partnerships and public-private partnerships and so on. I guess how does this kind of work? And I think when it works well between business and government, it is recognising that there's a symbiosis there, that each can't really exist without the other. That there is much in common. Both strive to achieve great results with limited resources. Both need to innovate to stay relevant to their stakeholders. However, of course, in many ways they're also very different. A business is accountable to its customers, its people, its shareholders, and of course the law. But despite holding sovereign power, no one is held to really account to the same level that a democratic government is in terms of the transparency and accountability that it has with its citizens. Business leaders need to understand how to contribute effectively in this context. Business has a role in offering insight in terms of what's needed for economic success. And I think those of us who also operate globally have a responsibility to share some of the lessons learned from comparable countries and how we could apply some of those lessons to what New Zealand's going through from a policy perspective or from an infrastructure or project level. Many of us also earn our keep by helping others succeed, and many of us only succeed through having a really vibrant ecosystem around us. In the case of the high-tech sector, it's very much about having the right sort of highly skilled workforce available, having a competitive partner channel, the right legislative environment that respects intellectual property, global standards, necessary broadband, etc., etc. And all of those things need to be in place in order to have a successful technology sector. It's a complex environment, and I think it's one where government really plays a very key role if this sector is going to continue to thrive and prosper. And I think there was something that came out recently, the TIN 100, that showed that technology as a whole now is the third largest export earner after dairy and tourism for New Zealand, so it's certainly a high growth area. In Microsoft's case, we aim to help organisations achieve better results through the use of technology, increased productivity, cost savings, and of course innovation. Our Prime Minister recently mentioned that he was shocked to find that many agencies were out of date on technology, and that caused a bit of a stir in the media, but it's true. But equally, there's no reason why this government can't be a world leader in terms of how it leverages modern technology and work styles, online services, etc., for better citizen engagement. But this is going to require change, and it's also going to require a lot of public debate around issues such as privacy, security, data sovereignty, and the trade-offs that people may or may not be willing to make in terms of how they can take advantage of some of these new technologies. On the policy side, for example, some of the things that we do is we're sponsoring this week the Victoria University's Identity Conference, which is going on right now at Te Papa. And that's an example where the very best thinking on identity and privacy is essential for ensuring that people can trust these new online services and proceed forward in an environment of understanding. So how can we make sure that the symbiosis that I mentioned between business and government works really well and benefits everybody? Well, from my own perspective, business has to understand the results that government wants to achieve. You have to listen, you have to put the time in to find the right time and when to communicate effectively, and also very pragmatically. You need to be very crisp and clear in terms of what you're trying to achieve. You need to understand the complex and sometimes very contradictory demands that key stakeholders make on government chief executives. On one hand, you need to be both short-term and pragmatic, whilst also thinking long-term and very strategic. All this needs to occur in the context of government's unique accountability to the people, and of course the very high level of transparency and accountability that surrounds any major, and often, as we know, not so major decisions. Any actions that you take must be able to withstand full public scrutiny and full public disclosure, which is different from how most commercial relationships and commercial transactions are done. Pleased to be here to talk, I think, around at the launch of Mai Chen's Public Law Toolbox. I was hoping to read it on the plane on the way down, but I think that might take a little bit longer. There's a lot of really good insight in there. and I think it's great that we can bring this knowledge to bear. It's certainly a book that I wish I had several years ago instead of having to learn some of these things the hard way. So this government's broadcasting its intention to embrace change and achieve a number of really ambitious results. Simpler procurement rules are under discussion, and the government is thinking more about how to leverage innovation and how they can improve project outcomes. Change can only occur with dedication and work by many people, both in government and business. And I think what business needs to look at carefully is how we can contribute to those results in a constructive way. We know the government wants to achieve quick results and also with speed, but yet there's a saying we often use inside Microsoft, which is be quick, but also don't be in a hurry. Because often, and especially when you're talking about transformation inside government, the problems that might seem inconsequential in a commercial context can often become major roadblocks and barriers in a public sector world. I guess the last point then is around, is there more that the government could do to foster a better dialogue and innovation between public sector and private sector? My own experience, having been back in New Zealand for 2 years, this government's actually done a lot to move this forward. The way that they engage with the technology sector I think is very transparent. They often discuss results and outcomes that they want to achieve first, and then often are open to bringing in expert panels to help inform the process as they move forward. But I think I'd like to see even more of this in terms of what could be done in a fresh environment. What assumptions could be put aside, and how would processes look if they were digital first with citizens at the centre in terms of how we did our processes between citizens and government. These new ideas can't immediately be rolled out, of course. It's reasonable to want to test them first, kick the tyres, see if the PowerPoint presentation actually matches reality. Yet today it's difficult often to find that space between sort of coffee conversations on very sort of general topics and then very formal procurement processes that get kicked in as soon as you're talking about anything specific or concrete in terms of a project. Once you're in a formal procurement process, how can the government ensure that the best ideas from the private sector can still be leveraged in a very transparent manner that improves the final solution delivered to taxpayers? So we think there's room for some form of experimental labs or innovation labs that could fill some of that gap and help speed things up. We've seen it work in other countries. And so one of the things we're pushing for is how we could encourage this model to have sort of transformation labs in New Zealand. It could be done should be done in a very transparent and open way, where different businesses, often different competing businesses, can come in, hear about the problems and constraints faced by agencies, and then put together proof of concepts and sort of rapidly iterate before something is done in a major way as a major project. It's the dialogue about real problems and real solutions that we need. It's fairly technical, but in a way that doesn't get super bogged down in terms of formality, yet it's very transparent and open. We're also finding it's exciting for agencies to get involved in this because it gives them a taste of the future, and there are enthusiasts at all levels of government in terms of change agents and how they can participate to make it real. So these are just some of the ideas I think that we think about when we think about how we engage with government. We're really looking forward to seeing the Public Law Toolbox in the hands of as many people as possible, because I'm excited about New Zealand's future as a smarter, more connected and more competitive nation, and I think that's something we can all contribute to. Thank you very much.